Welcome to SVG-TV News for Tuesday, February 12th, 2019. I am Yvette Boynes with the details. The maintenance of life and the economy is linked to the rich ecosystem of SVG, and one organization has emerged to lend support for its conservation. This SVG Conservation Fund was created to source and provide funds for all activities relating to the conservation of this country's unique ecosystem and biodiversity. Speaking at the official launch of the fund at the Paradise Beach Hotel today, Chairman Michael John said the sustainable use of resources is key if future generations are to enjoy them. Highlighting some of the goals of the organization, John said they will be focusing on sustainable development and the management of protected areas.
The fund has four main goals. Goal 1, to protect and enhance our ecosystem, protect and enhance critical ecosystem in St. Vincent and the Grenadines against threat inclusive of pollution, unsustainable development and climate change. Strengthening the governance of the management, effectiveness of the protected area. As the country declared new protective areas in land and on sea, the fund will work with government and NGOs to strengthen the management of these protected areas.
John added that special attention will also be paid in the area of effective change within communities through educational programs.
We're going to use education to raise the awareness and to empower the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to support conservation effort. Goal 4, create sustainable livelihood. The funds providing training to persons supporting the conservation effort. As Vincentians, we all must be very proud today. Conservation is an area that is always overlooked, or it is not given the importance that it truly deserves. But today is the day when the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Conservation Fund is bringing the issue to the fore.
Also speaking at the launching ceremony was Minister of Finance and Economic Planning Camilla Gonzalez, who welcomed the Conservation Fund. He said while the government and some non-governmental organizations have been playing a role in protecting the environment, the business sector can add further support.
The business sector in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has generally stood askance from the issue of environmental protection and conservation. It cannot continue like that. The Chamber of Commerce is here. I want to urge them to educate their members on the issue of environmental protection and conservation. I see representatives of the financial sector that are here. Your business can't simply be judged on your profits and your losses. You have to have an assessment of your social responsibilities and your environmental responsibilities, particularly in a country that is as threatened environmentally as St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This is a fund that we're launching here, which means it needs money, and it needs money not only from our friends in Germany and the World Bank and the Ministry of Finance, but they need money from you. They need money from the business sector to also contribute to do the very good work that they hope to do. And I hope that we can say that we have a fund that's not just funded by Germans and the World Bank, but it's also funded by Vincentians. I think that would be a useful thing in our own work.
Meanwhile, Minister Gonzalez said every decision on development must be made with the environment in mind. He said while SVG is blessed with mountains, forests, rivers and ocean space which provide resources and livelihood for Vincentians, their existence is under grave threat from climate change and the activities of mankind which must be recognized and addressed.
All of these ecosystems that we're blessed to have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are threatened. And the difficulty of having a diversity of ecosystems in a small country is that you can't just set aside increasing areas to say, well, leave that area alone, that's a protected area, we'll damage the rest. The large countries can do that. The United States can have a whole network of national parks, and you can go there and gaze in awe and wonder at the beauty and splendor of these things. We're a small country, and every developmental decision that we make has an ecological implication. And we have to try to, as best as possible, develop this country while not making decisions like blowing a hole in a reef or building a dock across the sand that make sense in the short term but have lasting environmental and ecological implications. So I think it's very important that we recognize the crisis, recognize the urgency, recognize the need for action, and therefore recognize the very important role that the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Conservation Fund can play in protecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
The Finance Minister said the government has been making positive steps towards preserving the environment as well as ecosystem through various policy decisions. He said banning of styrofoam products containing glyphosates on the hunting and consumption of sea turtles are some of these policies recently implemented by the government. The 2019 will see more environmental-based policies implemented, including those addressing grey water and single-use plastics.
This year we plan to work on the issue of grey water that I just mentioned and single-use plastic bags. It was easier to ban styrofoam because nobody in St. Vincent and the Grenadines makes styrofoam. We have plastic bag manufacturers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There are employment issues. We've spent the last year trying to resolve some of those issues. And we expect this year to move on plastic bags, to move on grey water, and to move, I see a veteran diver in the audience, and to move on reef-safe sunscreen, because there are some sunscreens that damage coral reefs and some that don't. And we hope to ban the harmful sunscreens and work with the tourism industry to ensure that they educate their guests about the impacts of some of the sunscreen they may bring in their suitcases when they come from overseas. That is, those are the headline areas of the government trying to move the envelope in 2019 environmentally.
Minister of Agriculture Sabota Caesar, who also addressed the launching ceremony, said while the government banned glyphosates, it has been discovered that 6 global orange juice producers have been tested positive for the substance. He said food safety is a key issue that is linked with the ecosystem and considers the testing exercise, which the ministry will be engaged in soon for these substances, as critical.
Some of the major orange juice brands in the world, and I won't call their names. Recent testing over the last week have found extremely high levels of glyphosate. And in the upcoming weeks, we at the Ministry of Agriculture, working closely with the Bureau of Standards and the Pesticides Board, we are going to test every imported product in St. Vincent and the Grenadines coming to our shores for pesticides residue. Because we are here to speak about the environment, but we have to mention the issue of food safety. Because if we do not foster the growth of organic production here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we impose upon ourselves these chemicals, all that we are doing here today will be an exercise in futility.
On day 2 of the hearing in the election petitions case at the NIS conference room, lawyer Maya Eustace, who was the first witness for the petitioners to take the stand yesterday, was this morning re-examined before Judge Stanley John. During her testimony yesterday, Eustace told the court that she did not record notes for one of the polling stations at Central Leeward as a roving polling agent. She was again asked by lead counsel for the respondents, Douglas Mendes, why she did not make the records. She responded that the atmosphere at the time did not allow her to do so. Eustace further told the court that she knew there were inconsistencies at the polling stations, as she was also confronted by what she termed as a barrage of omittance by the returning officer Winston Games. The petitioners led counsel Stanley Starkey John, upon re-examining Eustace, asked about photographs of mutilated ballot boxes, which she did not get to explain when asked by the respondent's lead counsel Douglas Mendes yesterday. However, this was not allowed, as Judge Stanley John said that he cannot continue along this line, as it could be seen as new evidence being brought forward, and that Eustace answered clearly yesterday. The second witness to take the stand today was lawyer Zita Barnwell. Barnwell said she was also present at the final count on election day in central Leeward. When asked if she recorded the number of ballots of 99, she said someone else recorded it. She was asked how many boxes were opened in her presence. She replied that she was present for central Leeward F1 and onwards. Upon further questioning as to the specific ballot boxes, Barnwell said she does not recall how many were opened, after initially stating that it could be 2. Barnwell was also cross-examined about the ballot, as in her statement, the stamp and initial of polling agent was not visible. Lead counsel Mendes used the paper to illustrate halfway, but this was objected to and was disallowed by the judge. Mendes then used a copy of a ballot to illustrate if stamps or initials were evident. However, Barnwell said that it was not a true copy that would represent her statement. Petitioner Benjamin Exeter was the third witness who was called up to take the stand today. Exeter maintains that he was uneasy about the voter turnout. He was also asked if it is possible that an error was made by the election officer with persons on the official list to those who voted. Exeter accepted that one could be an error, but 4 errors could not be a coincidence. One of the lawyers for petitioners' lawyers, K. Bacchus Batiste, said that a video presentation that was supposed to be played in court today as part of their evidence is likely to be played tomorrow.
He was cross-examined, and then we had no re-examination where his evidence is concerned, but we have a video that was recorded by Ben during the wrap-up of the Central Leeward final count, which shows clearly that they were strenuously objecting to that final count. So that video should be played in court tomorrow.
Bacchus Batiste said that the petitioners remain confident at this stage.
Mendes is a very experienced lawyer, and he tried valiantly. He did his best to cross-examine our witnesses, but I am very confident that we have such a strong pillar. We have 3 strong pillars that cannot be broached. One is that they counted over 300 and something void with ballots. They cannot get over that. They have to accept it. 2, the ballot was badly designed in such a way that it caused a breach of the secrecy. So the bad design is one, and then the breach of the secrecy is the other one. They tried valiantly to try to get around it, but I am not convinced that they have. And so on those 3 strong pillars, our cases remain intact.
Approximately 1,000 youth across SVG stand to benefit from skills training programs, which will be offered over the next 3 years. So said Minister of National Mobilization Frederick Stevenson in his contribution to the 2019 budget debate, which wrapped up last Thursday.
Mr. Speaker, I am happy to note, and as we listened, we hear that this budget doesn't have anything for the young people and employment opportunities for the young people. I'm happy to note, Mr. Speaker, and here in the Minister's budget presentation, that over the next 3 years or so, some 1,000 Vincentian young people will benefit from the offered youth skills for economic growth in the Eastern Caribbean. Yes. Mr. Speaker, this program will be headquartered in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, providing much needed training and employment opportunities for the young people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. A call center, Mr. Speaker, is in its final setting up to ensure that a number of the young people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines can become gainfully employed in the call sector industry. Talking about opportunities for our young people's development and advancement.
Minister Stevenson said that the youth of SVG will also experience great things in the Agriculture Youth Program.
And since 2018, we have embarked on a program plan to ensure that what we do for St. Vincent and the Grenadines in order for our poor and marginalized and the persons with disabilities and the
Government Minister said his ministry plans to accomplish a lot this year.
And since 2018, we have embarked on a program plan to ensure that what we do for St. Vincent and the Grenadines in order for our poor and marginalized and the persons with disabilities and the young people, we achieve what we set out to do. And some of these goals and strategic priorities are as follows. 1, to assist in poverty reduction through social protection. Secondly, to provide access to job opportunities resulting in reduced levels of unemployment. To facilitate, thirdly, social, cultural, and economic development at a community level. 4th, to empower youth to meaningfully participate and contribute to national development. 5, to assist in improving the living conditions of all sections of the population. 6, to facilitate the protection and inclusion of vulnerable and marginalized groups. 7, to engender a greater sense of community and social responsibility. And 8, to provide services that would facilitate increased participation, equity, engagement, and leadership of men and women in our community.
Meanwhile, Opposition Senator Israel Bruce said it is time that SVG transforms itself from a welfare to a workfare state. Bruce was at the time making his contribution to the 2019 budget debate, his first since his appointment a few weeks earlier.
Mr. Speaker, when you have in a country of 110,000 people or thereabouts, and of that 110, you have 11,000 plus people who are direct recipients of poor relief, then, Mr. Speaker, it gives you a classical picture of where we are. Mr. Speaker,
I rise on point of order.
Members.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Senator is misleading the House. 11,000 persons are not on poor relief.
How many persons are on relief, Honorable Minister?
If he was listening yesterday, Mr. Speaker, he would have been.
Tell us so we can
4,600 persons are on public assistance.
Wow.
2,000 less than what we had in the previous year. You can't miss the Parliament and come here to mislead.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I understand the separation that the Honourable Minister has provided for the Parliament. Where he's saying to this Honourable House that represents the totality of persons getting services as poor people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So, Mr. Speaker, I am not suggesting that there's anything wrong with poor people getting assistance. Well, we have gone past that. As I continue this presentation, I would go on to say that 11,044 Vincentian citizens had to benefit out of a population of 110 from some form of public assistance. That says, Mr. Speaker, that we have 11,000 people in this country who are catching their difficult times. Well, except you're telling me, if you say, oh, Mr. Speaker, you're suggesting that the people, these 11,000 people are well-off people, you're still giving state resources? So you either accept that they're not doing well, or you accept that they're doing well.
Senator Bruce said that the government's public assistance program is also facing major problems, which he said is as a result of poor management which must be addressed.
Able to go and access monies that were intended, that were supposed to be paid under the management of this ministry to other persons. And I say, attack the lady? I will tell you why I am not only going at the lady. Don't go there, Mr. Speaker. It is my understanding I am attacking the lack of accountability. I am not attacking the dishonesty. Mr. Speaker, it is my understanding that where you have beneficiaries on this program, that you have to have at the end of that particular fiscal year the issuance of live certificates. That certificate is supposed to send a message to the managers in the ministry that this person, Tom or Mary's name, ought to remain on the list of beneficiaries because that person is still alive and is in need of help. And I'm going to go to where the accountability issue lies. Mr. Speaker, a number of the names on that list for which monies were collected, dead people. Dead people. Mr. Speaker, I take it that the honorable member, the honorable Minister of Tourism, clearly does not see the responsibility of government to ensure, Mr. Speaker, if it is that the program was properly managed by the ministry, that could have never happened.
The opposition senator said overall the Ministry of Mobilization did poorly in 2018 with its planned programs and that he does not expect much difference this year.
We have as an objective under youth development in 2018 where 16 communities were to be targeted. The comment, the resultant, 64 youths finally were targeted. So, whereas communities were to be targeted, when you look at the result, we saw the result being reduced to 64 individuals as opposed to 16 communities. And we have to assess that for what it is worth. And I am not casting aspersion on the hard-working civil servants of this country. What I am saying, Mr. Speaker, is that you tell us via the estimates for 2018 that I'm going to focus on 16 communities, and when it's time to show your report card, you tell me on the report card, you can't tell me if it is one community that you had these 64 persons from. So what you do is that you pace it as 64 persons, but not a reflection, not an assessment of how many communities indeed and in fact were actually worked with. And that, to me, Mr. Speaker, is a serious deficit on the part of the ministry.
The Ministry of Education has been working along with the Ministry of Health to ensure proper nutrition is guaranteed for children in schools across the country. So says Government Senator Deborah Charles in her contribution to the 2019 budget debate in Parliament last week.
The coordinator of the program works with the Ministry of Health through its nutrition unit, which provides assistance in the form of nutrition guidelines and also menu planning. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to submit that all attendants to our kitchens, and that is 170-something of them, are required to obtain twice per year the food handlers' certificates. At this juncture, I would like also to thank the other institutions who assist or who have came on board with this feeding program. We have the Zero Hunger Trust Fund. We have Thirsty Water. We have Mustique. We have Mustique Charitable Trust. And also, well, I won't call this other entity, I'm not sure they want to be mentioned. But during the last school year, Mr. Speaker, the feeding program fed 17,075, prepared 17,075 meals.
Senator Charles, who also serves as Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, used the opportunity to encourage parents of students who are on the school's book loan scheme program to take better care of the books that are being loaned to them.
The other thing that we also ask, and I'm pleading here because I've seen it before, where you go during the summer break and you go on the street and there are books there with the government's school stamps in them. People are selling the books on the street. I'm pleading here this morning to the listening public, when you see a book on the street with the government stamp in it, that you report it to the police officers, because those books are not for resale.
The government senator further stated that the Ministry of Education is working to give youngsters who are challenged with behavioral problems a second chance to finish their education through the support system program.
The time of the ministry was created to provide short-term remedial service to our children. And most of the children that attend this support system have behavioral problems. They are students at risk. Some of them may have fallen afoul with the law, but they are given a second chance. We have provided counselors to work with them. Teachers are also there. And quite recently, we have had the appointment of a psychologist to complement the staff so that they can get into the minds of these children, see how they're operating and why they're operating at the level at which they are, and assist them much better in eventually going back into regular classrooms.